She fed the children everyone ignored, never knowing their father was the vampire king watching him. Even at midday, the sun felt weak, as if it feared the stone towers and narrow streets. Shadows lived here longer than light. People said the city was cursed, though no one agreed on when the curse began. Some said it was the night the vampire king took the throne. Others believed the curse was older, woven into the stones themselves. At the edge of the city stood a broken chapel, half collapsed and forgotten. Most citizens avoided it. They believed sorrow gathered there. But every morning a woman named Elira walked toward it with a basket in her arms. She was not noble. She was not powerful. She owned no land, no title, and no protection. Her cloak was old, her shoes worn thin by stone streets. Yet her steps were steady and her eyes held a quiet strength. Inside the basket was bread, soup wrapped in cloth, sometimes fruit when she could afford it. Always enough to share. The children were already waiting. They came from alleys, ruins, and doorways where no one else looked. Some were human, some were not. A few bore strange signs, silver eyes, pale skin, faint shadows that moved when they did not. These were the children people feared, children born of cursed blood, children no one claimed. Elira smiled at them all the same. Slowly, she said, gently kneeling, "There is enough for everyone." The children trusted her. That alone was rare. They ate quietly at first, as if afraid the food might vanish. Elira watched them, her heart tight with both warmth and pain. She knew what the city said about them. She knew what the laws said. Children like these were not meant to survive. Yet here they were. She wiped a boy's face with her sleeve. "Did you sleep?" He nodded. "The cold did not bite so hard last night." That was victory enough for her. Above the city, far from the broken chapel, black towers pierced the sky. The black citadel rose like a crown of stone and shadow. No banners flew from it, yet everyone knew who ruled there. King Valor, the vampire king. He was spoken of in low voices, if at all. Some said he was cruel. Others said he was only fair, and that fairness felt cruel to those who begged. It was said he did not forgive weakness. It was said he did not love. From the highest balcony of the citadel, Valor stood in silence. He watched the city as he always did. Immortality made time strange. Centuries passed like seasons. Faces changed. Streets rebuilt themselves. Only the hunger of the city remained the same. Valor's senses reached farther than any human's. He could hear heartbeats, feel fear ripple through crowds, taste lies on the air. Today something pulled his attention downward. Not fear, not rebellion, care. Near the ruined chapel, a warmth moved against the cold rhythm of the city. A quiet defiance. He narrowed his eyes. A woman, feeding children. That alone was not unusual. Charity existed, weak and temporary. What stopped his breath was something deeper, something ancient. The blood, his gaze sharpened. The children gathered around her carried a mark he knew too well. A mark tied to old nights and choices long buried. Royal blood. His blood. Valor's hand tightened on the stone railing. Impossible, he thought. Long ago, when his rule was young and uncertain, he had made laws to protect the throne. Children born outside sanctioned bloodlines were cast out. Mercy, he believed, would break the kingdom. Fear would keep it whole. He had never looked back. Yet now those children lived. Not hidden, not hunted, fed, protected by a mortal woman who did not even know what they were. Elira laughed softly as one child tugged her sleeve. The sound drifted upward like a blade through Valor's chest. He had not heard laughter like that in centuries. "Who is she?" he asked quietly. A shadow moved beside him. Lord Marek, his advisor, bowed. "A common woman, your majesty. She has no record, no power." Valor did not look away from the chapel. "Watch her." Marek hesitated. "Shall we remove the children?" "No," the word fell like iron. "Not yet." Below, Elira finished feeding the children. She stayed longer than she should have, telling them a story about a son that once loved the night and tried to change it. The children listened with wide eyes. When she finally stood, the cold seemed heavier. "Tomorrow," she promised, "I will come again." As she walked home, she felt it, the sense of being watched. She turned once, heart quickening, but saw only shadows and stone. She shook her head. The city played tricks on lonely people. That night, Vaylor did not rest. Memory returned to him like a wound reopened. Faces he had never allowed himself to remember. Women cast out. Children left to fate. He told himself it was necessary. He had always told himself that. Yet the woman at the chapel had undone that lie without a single word. At dawn, the king rose from his throne. "Prepare a summons," he said. "For whom, your majesty?" Marek asked carefully. Vaylor's eyes burned red in the half-light. "The woman who feeds my ghosts." Far below, Alira woke with a sudden fear she could not name. And the city held its breath. The black citadel loomed like a shadow over Wirelith, its towers piercing the low morning sky. Inside, stone halls echoed with silence, broken only by the faint whisper of wind through narrow windows. The city below moved as it always had, unaware, frightened, or simply resigned to the rule of the vampire king. Alira did not know she was about to step into that silence. A messenger arrived at her small home before dawn, carrying a scroll sealed with black wax, the mark of the citadel. Her hands trembled as she broke it. "By the command of King Vaylor, you are summoned to the Black Citadel. You will come unharmed. Refusal is not permitted." Her heart skipped, not with fear, but with the sudden weight of curiosity. Why summon her? She had done nothing wrong, at least nothing she knew. The streets of Wirelith were emptier than usual that morning. Merchants shuttered doors. Children hid in alleyways. Whispers followed her like a wind she could not see. When she reached the citadel, the gates opened silently. Guards with pale faces and eyes like dark crystals flanked the entrance, their posture rigid, unmoving. Alira's small steps echoed against the polished stone. She clutched her basket of simple cloths and dried bread out of habit, though she would not be giving it to anyone here. Inside, the throne room stretched like a cave, vast and cold. Shadows clung to the corners, moving as if alive. Candles burned along the walls, casting more darkness than light. At the far end, on a throne of black stone and silver spikes, sat King Vaylor. His presence alone seemed to command the air. He did not rise as she entered, yet every inch of her body knew she was seen. Alira knelt, not out of fear but out of instinct. "You summon me, your majesty." Her voice was steady, though her heart thudded in her chest. Vaylor's eyes were red, sharp as knives, yet unreadable. He observed her, silent. Finally, he spoke in a voice like distant thunder. "You feed children the world has forgotten," she nodded. "They are hungry and no one else will help them. It is the right thing to do." "Do you understand what you do?" he asked. "Do you know whose blood they carry?" Alira's brow furrowed. I do not." "They are children who need food, shelter, and warmth. That is all I know." Vaylor's gaze hardened. "They are mine. By law, they were never to live." Her hands clenched instinctively. "Then perhaps your laws are wrong." The king's lips curved slightly, almost a smile, though it did not reach his eyes. "Few have ever spoken to me like that." She did not flinch. "I speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. I cannot watch them suffer, and if that makes me wrong in your eyes, I will bear it." Silence filled the hall. The wind outside rattled the high windows and the candle flames flickered as if hesitant. Vaylor leaned forward, resting his hands on the armrests of his throne. "Your courage is unusual," he said, "but courage alone does not protect them. Or you." Alira's chest tightened. She had expected fear, threats, maybe even dismissal, but not curiosity, not this strange, piercing attention. "I have nothing to hide," she said softly. "I only want them to live." Vaylor's gaze lingered on her, measuring, weighing, something he had not felt in centuries. The citadel had been built to hold power, not mercy. Yet here, in this small mortal woman, he glimpsed a force stronger than any blade or spell, compassion. "Tomorrow I will test you," he said finally, "not with words but with deeds. You will care for them here inside the citadel." Her eyes widened. "Inside, but—" "Inside," Valor repeated. "You will not harm a single child, and none shall harm you. But if you fail—" His words stopped, heavy with unspoken consequences. Alira nodded, heart hammering. She had no choice but to obey. That night the citadel did not sleep. Shadows moved through empty corridors. Guards whispered in corners, unsure if they had ever seen their king feel anything other than command. Alira lay on a small bed prepared for her in a chamber near the children. The room was simple, but warmer than she expected. A candle flickered on the bedside table, revealing her pale reflection in the polished metal mirror. She thought of the children outside, waiting for her, wondering if she had made a mistake. But she knew she had not. They needed her. They always had. Outside her window, the black citadel's towers reached high into the night sky. Somewhere above, Valor watched as he always did. The next morning the children arrived at the citadel with Alira. Some cried. Some were silent as if they had never spoken freely before. Others clung to her hands, trusting her completely. Valor observed from the shadows of the high hall. He saw the way she comforted them, the way she made a smile appear even on the smallest faces. And slowly, a part of him, long buried under centuries of rule, softened. He approached silently. His presence made even the bravest children shrink back. Alira remained calm, though she felt the weight of his gaze on her. "You have done well to bring them here safely," he said, voice low but firm. She looked at him fully for the first time, seeing not just a king, but a being shaped by time, by loss, and by pain. "I only follow what I know is right," she said. "And yet, what is right has consequences," Valor murmured. "Do you understand what you bring into this place?" "I understand that they will be safe," she said, steady. "And I will not leave them." He studied her. "Few would speak so boldly before me, even fewer would stay." A flicker of something, admiration, perhaps longing, passed through his eyes. It surprised even him. He turned away abruptly, hiding it. Days passed. Alira cared for the children with relentless patience. She taught them to speak softly, to eat properly, to laugh despite fear. Slowly they thrived, their strength growing under her guidance. Valor watched her every movement. He saw the way she refused to take orders, even when he offered protection. He saw the moments she rested, exhausted, and yet rose again with determination. He realized that the citadel had never housed such light, and it unsettled him more than any enemy ever had. One evening he entered her chamber without announcement. She was reading to the children, their faces glowing with happiness, their small hands clutching blankets and simple toys. He stopped at the doorway, watching silently. For a moment he allowed himself to imagine a life where he could be part of this, not as a king, not as a ruler of shadows, but simply as someone who could care. The children noticed him and froze. One small boy stepped forward, trembling. You are the king." Valor nodded slowly. "I am." Alira placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "Do not fear him, he will not harm you." The boy's eyes widened in disbelief, but he nodded. Others looked to Alira for guidance, and slowly the tension eased. Valor's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but a trace of something close. He cleared his throat. "You have done well," he said again, softer this time. "But understand, the world outside these walls will not be so forgiving." "I do not care for the world outside," Alira said simply. "I care for those I can touch, those I can protect." Her words struck something in him, remembrance of promises he had once made, long before fear had hardened his heart. Days turned into weeks. Alira grew stronger in her confidence. Valor grew restless in his curiosity. Every glance, every word, seemed charged with unspoken questions and half-formed desires. One night, during the quiet hour before dawn, Valor approached her on the balcony overlooking the city. "Why do you risk yourself for them?" he asked. "For children who are not yours, who will never truly be yours." Alira turned to face him, her hair catching the silver light of the moon. "Because they have no one else. Because I am all they have. And because doing nothing is worse than risking everything. His gaze softened, and for the first time he spoke not as a king but as a man. You remind me of someone I once knew, he murmured, long ago before everything, and yet you are braver than she ever was. Her lips parted, unsure what to say. She felt something stirring, something dangerous yet irresistible. Above the city, the moon cast shadows across the towers. And below, the children slept peacefully, unaware of the tension that had grown between the mortal woman and the vampire king, who had once abandoned his own blood. The citadel was quieter than usual that morning. Sunlight barely touched the high halls, leaving the stone corridors in soft shadows. Even Vaylor's guards moved with careful silence, sensing a change in the air. Elira walked beside the children, carrying small baskets of food. Their laughter echoed faintly against the walls, a sound so rare in the citadel it seemed almost magical. Vaylor observed them from the balcony above, hidden in the half-light. His red eyes softened as he watched the smallest of the children chase shadows along the marble floors. Something long dormant stirred inside him, something he had tried to bury beneath centuries of rule. Yet the peace was fragile. A messenger arrived, panting and pale. "Your Majesty, there are visitors, lords from the southern territories, demanding an audience." Vaylor's expression darkened. "Bring them to the council hall." His voice was sharp, though he did not leave the balcony. He continued watching Elira below. The southern lords arrived quickly, their robes heavy and their eyes suspicious. They bowed, but the weight in the room was clear. They had heard whispers of the children in the citadel, of the mortal woman protecting them. "You allow children of forbidden blood to live," one lord demanded. His voice was harsh, sharp like flint. "Do you forget the laws of our kind? Of the throne?" Vaylor's lips pressed together. "No law is absolute," he said quietly, "and mercy does not weaken the crown." The lord's eyes widened. One laughed bitterly. "Mercy? You bring an outsider here, feeding the blood of your heirs, and call it mercy? You risk everything." Elira, standing among the children, felt their fear. She took a deep breath. "They are children. They are not your enemies. They are not tools to test your laws. They are alive because no one else saw them." Vaylor's gaze found hers. In that look he did not see rebellion. He saw the courage that had drawn him from shadow to stone. He saw truth. And for the first time he wondered if he had ever ruled rightly. The southern lords exchanged uneasy glances. One spoke, quieter this time. "You weaken the realm, Vaylor. By keeping them you show weakness." Vaylor's voice was ice and fire combined. "Weakness is not a king's failure. Blind cruelty is. I will not punish innocence for the mistakes of the past." The lords recoiled. Some whispered of rebellion. Others tried to mask their fear with forced respect. Vaylor did not flinch. He had ruled for centuries, but this was different. He was not confronting armies or traitors. He was confronting something human, something he had long forgotten: conscience. That night, Elira helped the children settle into the small chambers prepared for them. They slept peacefully for the first time, unaware of the tension building above in the halls of the vampire king. Vaylor appeared without sound, watching her quietly. "You speak freely before me," he said. "You do not bow to fear." "Why?" She turned, brushing crumbs from her hands. "Because fear does not feed children. Fear does not protect them. Fear does not give them a chance." For a moment, Vaylor said nothing. The weight of his years pressed down on him. The crown, the laws, the exile of his own blood long ago. He had believed that fear was necessary. That mercy was weakness. That love was dangerous. And yet here was Elira teaching him that none of those beliefs were true. "You are stronger than any mortal I have ever known," he murmured. Elira's heart skipped. "And you are stronger than anyone I have ever met." He turned away abruptly, hiding the warmth in his eyes. The next days brought danger. Rumors spread through the vampire territories. The king had broken the laws, protecting children of forbidden blood. Rival lords whispered of rebellion. Hunters and spies slipped through the shadows, seeking to claim the children or to strike at the king himself. Valor moved with cold precision. Guards patrolled corridors, wards strengthened the citadel, and shadows of power shifted. He had faced armies before, but never had he faced the world that demanded cruelty for the sake of tradition. One afternoon, a young boy came running to Alira, clutching a note he had found hidden in the corridors. "It says, 'They will take us,'" he cried. Alira's heart tightened. She looked toward the highest balcony. Valor was already there, watching, his expression unreadable. "They will not," he said simply. His voice carried both promise and warning. "I will protect them. No one may touch them without my command." Alira nodded, trusting him, though she knew it would not be enough to keep their enemies away forever. Days passed. Valor began to see the children not just as heirs, but as part of himself. He noticed the smallest things: how the youngest boy tilted his head when worried, how the eldest girl held the others close when frightened. He began to understand that the bloodline he had once abandoned was not weak, it was resilient. And more than that, it had something he had long denied himself: love. Alira noticed his attention as well. There were moments when he would linger near the children, watching silently. Sometimes she caught his eyes on her, unguarded, thoughtful. One night she approached him on the balcony. The city lights below flickered like scattered stars. "Why do you watch me?" she asked softly. Valor did not answer immediately. He turned toward the night, letting the wind brush past him. "I watch many things," he said. "But you are not what I expected." Her lips parted. "What did you expect?" "A mortal who feared me," he said quietly. "A woman who would kneel, who would obey without thought." "I do not kneel to fear," she replied. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "No, you do not." They stood in silence, the city stretching endlessly below. For a moment they were neither king nor servant, neither ruler nor mortal. They were simply two souls feeling the pull of something older than law, older than time. Then came the revelation. One evening, while the children slept, Valor summoned Alira to the Hall of Records. There, in ancient ledgers bound in black leather, were names she had never seen before, dates she could not comprehend, and a truth that made her knees weak. The children, they were his. Every one of them bore the mark of his blood. Every curse that had been laid upon them was the result of his command long ago. He had ordered their mothers exiled, believing that mercy would weaken the kingdom. And now, centuries later, these children, hidden, unloved, yet alive, were under her care. Alira stared at the pages, then at Valor. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held centuries of guilt. "You," she whispered. "They are yours," Valor bowed his head. "I abandoned them. I thought it was necessary. I thought I could rule without weakness. But you have proven me wrong." Her hands trembled. "All this time I fed your children, not knowing who they were. And you watched." He did not answer immediately. He finally said, "I watched, and I waited. I never thought someone mortal could give them the care I could not. Someone could love them without fear, without politics, without judgment." Tears pricked her eyes, though she blinked quickly. "Why did you not intervene before?" "I was afraid," he admitted, voice low and raw. "Afraid that if I showed mercy I would be seen as weak, afraid that my own heart would betray me." Alira stepped closer, reaching out. "You do not have to be afraid now." Valor's gaze met hers. In that instant, the centuries of darkness seemed to pause. He realized that he had begun to care, not as a king but as a father, not as a ruler but as a man. The following weeks were tense. The citadel was no longer just a home for the children. It was a fortress against those who opposed the king's decision. Rival lords whispered in the shadows. Hunters lurked, waiting for the right moment. Alira remained by the children, her courage unwavering. Valor remained close, silent, and vigilant, each of them learning, each of them changing. And beneath the tension, something deeper grew, something neither dared to speak, yet both felt in every glance, every shared silence. Cliffhanger. One night, as a storm raged over Wirelith, a figure appeared at the gates of the citadel, a messenger from the southern territories, soaked and trembling. He carried a single message, written in crimson ink. Your mercy will cost you everything. The children are not safe. The king will have to choose or lose them all. Valar's eyes darkened and he turned toward Alira. For the first time his voice shook, not with anger but with fear. Prepare them, he said. The night is coming. The storm beat against the walls, echoing the fear and tension that had grown beyond control. And in the citadel, father, protector, and mortal woman braced for a battle that would test every choice they had made. The storm had passed, leaving the black citadel glistening under a pale, uncertain dawn. Rainwater dripped from the black stone towers, pooling on the marble steps below. Outside, Wirelith was quiet, too quiet. Inside the citadel, the air felt heavy with tension. The children slept, unaware of the danger approaching. Alira moved through the halls, carrying blankets and small bundles of food. She whispered to the eldest girl, "Stay close to the others. Nothing will happen while I am here." Valar watched from the balcony above, his presence nearly invisible in the half-light. His eyes followed every step she took. For centuries he had ruled through fear. Now, for the first time, he ruled through something he had thought long lost, hope. But hope alone could not protect them. By mid-morning, the southern lords arrived at the gates, their banners dark against the sky. Their numbers were small, but their intent was clear. They would take the children, or they would kill anyone who protected them. Valar descended the stairs into the great hall. Guards flanked him, their weapons ready. The king's cloak swept the stone floor, dark as midnight. He paused before the gates, allowing the southern lords to see the power they sought to challenge. "Leave," Valar said calmly. "These children are under my protection. Leave or face the consequences." The lords laughed, bitter and mocking. "We will not bow to fear, Valar. You defy our laws, our traditions, and now you defy us. These children are nothing. Their blood is cursed. Your mercy will destroy the kingdom." Valar's voice dropped, carrying a weight that silenced the hall. "No, you are mistaken. Mercy is not weakness. Love is not weakness. I will not sacrifice innocence for the sake of old fear. If you wish to fight me, do so, but know this, I will not allow harm to come to them." A tense silence followed. Even the guards, seasoned and loyal, felt the weight of centuries pressing on the king's shoulders. Then, with a single movement, Valar extended his hand. Shadows flowed from him, wrapping the hall in a chill wind. The southern lords faltered. "Leave," he commanded again. The shadows pressed closer, cold and alive. "Leave or be cast out of this world." The lords hesitated, eyes wide. None had faced a king willing to wield both justice and mercy with equal strength. Slowly, one by one, they lowered their heads and retreated, leaving the gates and halls in silence. Alira stepped forward, her voice soft. "You were incredible." Valar turned, his eyes still carrying the darkness of centuries, but softened by the faint light of dawn. "Incredible?" he asked, almost amused. "You protected them, not because you had to, but because you chose to," she said. "Most would have followed tradition, most would have let fear rule." Valar paused. He remembered the faces of the children he had abandoned centuries ago, the lives he had believed lost forever. He had ruled through fear, yes, but he had never felt the weight of true redemption until now. "You remind me," he said quietly, "that a king can choose more than power, that even a vampire king can change." Alira stepped closer. "And you have changed," she said, her voice carrying both certainty and awe. For a moment they simply looked at each other. 2 centuries of shadows, 2 lives shaped by fear and tradition, and now a fragile hope connecting them. In the days that followed, the citadel began to feel alive in a way it had never known. The children ran through the halls, laughing, playing, learning. Guards and servants whispered in amazement. The king who once ruled through fear now moved among them quietly, his presence a shield rather than a threat. Valar spent hours watching Alira care for the children. Sometimes he would stand just behind her unseen and listen to her gentle voice guiding them. He had fought countless battles, made impossible choices, yet nothing had touched his heart as much as this mortal woman, this light among the shadows. Elira, in turn, began to see Valor not as a distant, terrifying king, but as a man who carried centuries of guilt and regret, who now sought a chance to protect what he had once abandoned. Their connection deepened silently, a slow current of trust and unspoken understanding. But peace never lasts forever. A spy slipped through the Citadel's defenses one night, delivering news that chilled even Valor. Another faction of vampires, loyal to old traditions, was approaching, their intent to claim the children or destroy them and anyone who protected them. Valor moved quickly, calling guards to prepare the Citadel's defenses. He gathered Elira in the shadowed balcony, overlooking the distant fires approaching from the hills. "They come for them," he said simply. "I will not leave," Elira said firmly. "Neither will the children." Valor studied her for a long moment, feeling the weight of centuries and the fragility of the moment. "Then we fight together," he said finally. The battle that night was unlike any the Citadel had ever faced. Shadows danced across the halls. Steel rang against steel. Spells and curses clashed with the force of centuries-old power. Valor moved like a storm, his presence alone enough to scatter enemies. Yet it was not his strength that mattered most, it was his choice. He could have destroyed them all without mercy. Instead, he fought to protect, to shield, to ensure the children remained safe. Elira, though mortal, did not flee. She guided the children to safe rooms, holding them together, calming their fears, giving them courage. She was the anchor in the storm, and in her courage, Valor found new strength. Hours passed, and at last the enemies faltered. The Citadel stood. The children were unharmed. And for the first time in centuries, Valor allowed himself to breathe without fear or guilt. The next morning, the Citadel was quiet. The storm had passed, leaving a soft light over black stone towers. Valor walked through the halls, observing the children as they ate and played. He paused by Elira, who was arranging flowers in the small courtyard, a rare smile on her face. "You did well," he said softly. She looked up, brushing soil from her hands. "We did well. You protected them, Valor. You saved them." He hesitated, unsure how to bridge centuries of distance with a single truth. Then slowly he knelt before her, not as a king, not as a ruler of shadows, but as a man seeking redemption. "You reminded me," he said quietly, "that love is stronger than fear. That mercy is stronger than power, and that even a vampire king can change." Elira felt her heart stir. She reached out, placing her hand over his. "You have changed," she said, "and the children, they are safe because of you." Valor's eyes softened, and for the first time the centuries of darkness seemed to fall away. He realized that true strength was not in ruling through fear, but in choosing to protect, to forgive, and to love. In the weeks that followed, Valor made a choice that would echo through history. He acknowledged the children as his heirs, publicly declaring that the laws of fear and cruelty would no longer bind the kingdom. The southern lords, once defiant, could do nothing against a king who had earned not just respect but love and trust. Elira remained at his side, not as a servant, not as a mortal under a king, but as an equal, a partner in both care and purpose. Together, they built a world where children could live without fear, where mercy ruled alongside justice, and where even a vampire king could find redemption. One evening, standing on the balcony together, Valor looked out over Virelith. The city glimmered under the moonlight, quiet and safe. Elira leaned on his shoulder. "Do you think they will ever forgive you for the past?" she asked softly. Valor did not answer immediately. Instead, he watched the city, feeling the weight of centuries lifting. "I do not know," he said finally, "but I will spend the rest of my life making it right. That is all I can do," she smiled. "And that is enough." The children ran below, their laughter ringing through the halls. For the first time, Valor did not feel the sting of loss or the weight of failure. Instead, he felt a quiet, steady joy, the kind that comes from redemption earned and love discovered. He turned to Alira, his immortal eyes softened by warmth. "I was a king of shadows," he said. "But with you I have learned to see the light." She took his hand, holding it gently. "And I will walk beside you," she said, "through light or shadow together." Above them, the moon shone fully, casting silver across the towers of the citadel. It was a new